This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew. Welcome to the Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast. I'm your host, co-founder, and editorial director of Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, Jamie Bogner. My guest on the podcast today is Gary Gulley of Alarmist Brewing here in Chicago, Illinois. Welcome to the podcast, Gary.
Thanks for having me.
Gary, launched this brewery a few years ago, and then last year, in the first year of the award for it, won a gold medal for a Hazy, Juicy IPA in that kind of category, and kind of changed your life, huh, Gary?
Yeah, the GABF, it kind of changed everything for us. So it was amazing.
So we're going to talk about some brewing here in a few minutes, but first, as the brewing industry's premier choice for glycol chilling, G&D Chillers has set the standard on quality, service, reliability, and dedication to their customers' craft. For 25 years, G&D has led the way with innovative solutions for the craft brewing industry. Contact G&D Chillers today at 1-800-555-0973 or reach out online at gdchillers.com. Mention Craft Beer and Brewing Podcast and you'll receive up to $1,000 worth of glycol with the purchase of any new G&D Chiller unit. Also, let Tavour transport you to the craft brewery bar stools all across the country. They obliterate the geographical divide that prevents you from walking directly through the doors of any brew pub. Don't just read about life, drink it. Download the free Tavour app and get sought-after independent craft beer delivered right to your door. Use code BREWING for $10 in cold, hard beer money. So, Gary.
I use a G&D chiller, and I've sent beer to Tavour.
Have you?
Yeah, they sold it really fast.
Well, I guess you should make some more, huh?
Yeah. They keep asking. I'm like, I don't have enough, but I will.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Alarmist. Tell me a little bit about how you got started in brewing.
So I started home brewing in 91. I had a coworker.
Oh shit, you're old.
Yeah, I'm old, and it was very funny because I didn't really like beer back then.
Yeah.
And I had a coworker who.
Didn't like beer, huh?
Yeah, because, it was your Bud, excuse me. Well, yeah, it was Bud and Miller, okay? I don't like those beers. But...
Here in Chicago, or...?
No, I was in Texas, actually, working
okay.
out of college, and a nuclear power plant, which is a whole funny joke in itself. And then I just got into it, and I stopped for a while, and then kind of in the, 2008, I want to say, started up again. I don't even really know why. And then I joined the Chicago Beer Society, which is a very famous homebrew club, home of Randy Mosher and Ray Daniels and all these guys. And
those guys are okay.
Yeah, Ray actually lives just right over here, so it's funny. I know him. He's a good buddy. But I met other people, and next thing you know, I was like, I wonder if I want to do this. And I was in my corporate America doing technology, and it just, through a series of events, my wife, this is all blog. I used to blog about this, and it's funny because people still tell me they saw the blog. I apologize for anybody who does, because half the things on there are wrong, probably 3/4. But my wife had breast cancer, and I got fired from my job right around then, and a whole bunch of things happened. She's fine. She's totally fine now, but... after all that, I was like, you know what? I'm not working for anybody ever again, and I want to brew beer. So that's kind of how it started.
So you launched Alarmist.
Yeah. So I waited till I had a wife, 2 kids, and a mortgage in Chicago, and then quit my high-paying technology job and opened a brewery. So
sure, what could be the risk?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
All right.
So, but yeah, that's kind of the really short version.
And so how were the first couple of years of that? You opened the doors in 2014.
February 2015 is when we started brewing. The first 2 years were terrible.
Yeah, terrible. Don't pull any punches, Gary. Okay.
We didn't have a tap room, which was a big mistake.
Yeah.
But that was a fairly novel idea, actually. At least here in Chicago, there weren't a lot of tap rooms.
Sure.
And a lot of established breweries didn't have them.
Even today, there are breweries like Pipeworks that don't have tap rooms, which just seems strange. But
well, that's a whole legal thing, but they're going to get that fixed. But that was a big mistake. And I did like a lot of people, started with a bigger 20-barrel system, and I'm like, it's like if I brew it, they will come. And I didn't have enough money to open a tap room, so it took a couple years to get that open. So that was sort of the first when that tap room door opened. That was the first when things started turning around for us.
Was that 2017?
That was April 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, in retrospect, it seems like such a no-brainer, but I think you're absolutely right. Like, what we are looking at for the business model for craft beer is very different now than it was 5 years ago.
Yep.
Incredibly different than it was 10 years ago.
Yep.
And the rate at which it continues to change. I mean, what the expectations are, what brewers should be brewing, and what consumers want to buy or line up for, or routinely traffic through a tap room for. Changes probably every 6 to 9 months at this point.
It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But it's one of those. Everybody's got 20/20 hindsight. If I were to do it over, I would have started with a smaller system, and took that money, any additional money, and opened that tap room right away. But then again, now we've outgrown the system because of the metal, and now we can't keep up with production at all.
So tell me about that. I mean, every brewer that I talk to talks about that moment, or I should say, the ones that have won those medals, World Beer Cup or Great American Beer Festival.
Yeah.
Those two seem to be, the gold standard, if you will, for the things that the industry respects and that consumers respect, that local media respects, and that start to build a story about, holy shit, where did this brewery come from? Why haven't we been paying more attention to them?
Exactly.
And so you enter first year ever in the hazy juicy category for the Great American Beer Festival.
Yeah.
There's 400 plus entries in this category. It's certainly the most entered first year category for any brand new category at the Great American Beer Festival.
And second biggest ever.
And second biggest ever in the history of the entire competition.
Right,
and so,
right.
There's just a little bit of competition out here.
Yeah.
So from a brewery perspective, you decide you are making something that's good enough that can hang with all of those, so that you should spend your entry money on sending something in for that. Which is, but realistically, from a brewery perspective, like, most breweries that I know are carefully calculating their odds of winning as they're entering competitions, because it costs money to do this.
It's $160 per entry.
It's $160 per entry. Like, you're not going to throw this money away. And you also, you look at the odds of a category like that and have to think, what's my chance of winning? Like, maybe I'm going to make a field beer where there's 30 entries for, like, your favorite pumpkin beer. And, the odds in that category are going to be immeasurably better than something like hazy IPA. And so, or you enter the smoked lager category and, there's 25 entries. Well, obviously, the odds shift in something like that.
Sure.
But you decided, hey, I'm gonna throw in this category, which is probably going to be one of the biggest ever in the history of GABF.
Yeah.
And tell me a little bit about what went into the thinking behind that.
Well, we've been brewing it for about 6 months, actually, so it wasn't that long.
Six months.
I know, it's hilarious. And the whole...
You guys are old pros at this.
To
6
give you
months.
kind of a little background, anyone who wants to go to our I'm going to guess our Facebook page, I don't remember, somewhere you can go back and you will see us literally making fun of hazy IPAs. I think there's a point where we're pulling the trube out of the kettle after brewing, and we've got like a glass full of trube, and we're like, hey, we made a hazy IPA, and we just thought we were funny.
Oh, man, you're one of those brewers,
I talk about eating crow. And then really where it changed for me, I was at our big festival here called Beer Under Glass, which is a great festival we have every spring in Chicago, and I was talking to a friend of mine, BJ Pitchman, who used to be the brewer for Forbidden Root. He's since returned to corporate America. Sucks to be you, BJ. But he was talking to me, and I was drinking someone's hazy IPA, and I said, I don't understand. Like, is this just not filtered? He goes, no. And he starts talking about biotransformation and all these things and the yeast strain. He's like, you need to go research this. You need to brew this. And I'm like, So I started tasting a few, and I'm like, I actually like these, and I'm not sure why. And it just blew my mind. The whole thing the fact that we're sitting here talking about a hate, it's so crazy. And then Aaron, my brewer, Aaron Dowell, I talked one day. I said, "Look, I think we should try this," and he did not want to do it. And I had to. I had to draw a fine line between it's my brewery, you're going to do what I want, and let's try to get him on board and say let's just explore it. And he went down that rabbit hole, and he did not come out. He went to every local brewery. We got Corridor Dry Hop, who also won and they make great hazies, and Maplewood. We brewed beer with Maplewood, and we talked to I don't know how many other breweries. And Aaron really, really dug in and learned everything he could. And then he started making it, and then he loved it, and I loved it. I was like, I don't understand. Why do we like this beer? And then we started finding out more about it, and then it changed. And it was already starting to take off for us. The sales were getting, starting to be found out more and more. And then
the beer is Le Jus.
Le Jus, yeah. Le Jus.
Le Jus.
The juice in French. And I'm not even sure. That was Aaron's idea. And we were like, all right, fine, let's go. I think we were just trying to get the labels ordered. And I'm like, all right, let's get that. That's good. Let's go. So we got it. And then that's the only beer we sent to JB. We didn't send any other beers. And
we sent one beer.
We sent Le Jus. And, when we found out, we weren't there. And my phone started blowing up. Aaron's phone started blowing up, and we were just like, "This is amazing." My wife cried. I called her. I said, "We won," and she's just crying. And I said, "This changes everything for us." And it's one of those life-changing moments because I know other brewery. I've got some friends that want one gold and a kind of like you were saying, a kind of a small category.
Sure,
they're like, we didn't see any increase at all. I'm like, yeah, this is the big one.
Right.
And we were absolutely blown away. We had no idea. We were and then it immediately just changed everything for us.
Changed in what way? So what?
More beer.
What does winning a medal in a coveted category like that
category
actually mean for a brewery like yours?
In that category, it did a whole lot of marketing for us, really fast. And the thing is, I was so frustrated because we hadn't entered a lot of competitions, but a few. But I thought we were making really good beer. And I suppose everybody thinks that. But, let's be honest. There's a lot of breweries who don't make good beer. And I thought, we don't have off flavors. We're doing a really good job here. And I just felt we weren't getting our due. And when that happened, that was like all of a sudden it went from 0 to 100. And I'm like, finally, some recognition. Because, I thought we were making some really great beers. And it happened. And we couldn't be happier.
Well, making great beer, it's more than just not having off flavors in a beer. There's the technical, there's the technical acumen of that.
I guess my point with that is there are highly coveted breweries and beers that I've had plenty of off flavors from, and it makes me scratch my head, and it's frustrating because I want people to know that this isn't how beer should taste. But
at this level, though, for a gold medal at GABF, you want to expect that the beer is not just, perfectly free of off flavors, but there is some inspiration and idea that's carried through in an expression of flavor that expresses some sort of, interest, excitement, vibrancy, and captures this kind of moment in time that kind of describes what's great about this style at this kind of moment.
Well,
there should be some sort of like creative inspiration behind this, right?
Josh Knoll, who writes about beer for the Chicago Tribune, once he found out, he came in and did an article on us, and he tasted, and his comment was, it threads the needle. And I thought that was, I felt it really threaded the needle of what I think this beer should be, this style of beer, at least for us. And it was really nice to be recognized because we don't put in nearly as much hops as most breweries do for this style, at least from what people I've talked to.
Yeah.
And because it tastes like hop soup, and I don't like that flavor. And so we backed off where we felt it was a better beer. And fortunately for that day and that time and those judges, it worked out. So
I think that's an interesting piece. Now I'd love to explore it a little bit more. And I think you're right, because I will admit that I'm on my fourth right now over the last 3 hours of spending time here at the brewery and drinking 4 of some other breweries' hazy IPAs with that kind of residual sweetness and intense hop load could be overwhelming with some other beers. And so certainly that was my experience with it. Like, that first sip that I had when we were here at the tap room was like, oh, okay, it's good. And there's nothing about it that jumps out at me in a particular way.
Right.
But I really wanted to keep drinking it.
Sure.
And so I ordered another one. And then I ordered, the double dry hop Simcoe version of it.
Which is what you're drinking right now, by the way.
All right. Well, then I ordered another double dry hop Sim, because this is probably the fifth one now that I've had, if we're really, coming to grips with it.
Yeah, they come down easy.
And there's something to be said for, this kind of hazy, turbid, rich, hop-forward IPA that presents in such a way that is still drinkable and compelling and makes you want to keep ordering another one.
Yeah.
From a brewery perspective, that's certainly exactly what you want, because every brewery wants to sell people more beers and not fewer beers. Tell me a little bit about how you think about that kind of balance. Balance can happen at so many different points along that spectrum. We use balance as this kind of like de facto,
it's kind of a wide open term.
It can mean a lot of different things, but balance can happen all along that spectrum there. You've chosen to balance this at a drinkable level, or I should say a more drinkable level.
We went through, and we've always been about balance. I got lucky when I found Aaron. We had known each other through a little bit of home brewing, and he was kind of in my shoes. He wanted to change a career. He helped me one day, and I realized this guy's a badass, and he's just taken off. But we also had the same sort of view on craft beer in general, and I don't like dirty hop water, as I call it, and there's a lot of, I think that's kind of done, but there are a lot of breweries, including some that have gone out of business, that were making these just highly hopped regular West Coast IPAs that were I just thought they were awful. And I always like balance, and they make fun of me here at the brewery because I'll taste a beer, and one of the first things I will complain about is if it's too bitter. And when I say too bitter, I mean too bitter in the balance of everything.
Sure.
And there are,
because I love some highly bitter beers, and I can drink some 100 IBU
I'll drink
beers.
Pliny the Elder all day long,
Absolutely.
But it's in balance. That's the thing. It's part of that.
Right.
And there's a lot of beers that aren't, and there's a lot of New England IPAs that you get that what they call a hop bite, right? And it's on the back of the tongue. And what it is essentially, in my opinion, is that it's like all you gotta do is, if you ever take a hop pellet, it doesn't matter what hop pellet it is. It can be a Citra, Mosaic, or Saaz, or Cluster, whatever. It is just like, it's horrible. There's nothing good. There's nothing enjoyable about that. And that's that feeling I get on the back with that. And some people like that. I personally don't, but if you put too much, if you've got too much hops in there, you're going to get not only that, but you also get that sort of that vegetal flavor, and I don't like that at all. I really hate those flavors. That's just my opinion. That's not necessarily wrong in this style, depending on what you're trying to do. But for me, we just didn't like it, so we really backed off with hopping. And then the lactose, the first batch of New England IPA, or whatever you want to call it, that Aaron did, I remember there was so much lactose, the side of the glass was sticky. And that changed, and we really backed that off too. And you can make, we actually make another hazy IPA called Oat Shaker that we do occasionally, and there's no lactose in it at all, and it's really great too. So it definitely, lactose is that's a heavy weapon to wield. You have to be really careful with it.
Let's talk about that. So you use lactose in les jus?
Yep,
all
absolutely.
Right. Before we talk about that, PackTech delivers the highest quality and most environmentally responsible packaging handles to the craft beer industry. PackTech handles are made from 100% post-consumer recycled material and are repurposed from recycled milk jugs. In addition, they're also 100% recyclable. PackTech recently launched its own recycling program to ensure PackTech handles are properly recycled and repurposed. They're easy to apply by hand or increase your packaging efficiency with their robust line of automated applicators. PackTech's packaging solutions deliver better market presence, enhanced consumer value, environmental awareness, and improved sales. PackTech handles are the smart and sustainable packaging choice. Contact PackTech today at 541 461-5000 and visit at www.packtech-opi.com. Also, balancing barley and hops is your expertise, and Clarion Lubricants food-grade lubricants is theirs. The team at Clarion knows that when it comes to making great beer, you're the expert, and when it comes to supplying food-grade lubricants backed by service-oriented professionals, they're the experts. Clarion will work with you to create an efficient lubrication program that helps protect your brewery. To speak with an expert, dial 1-855-MY-CLARION, 855-692-5274, or visit ClarionLubricants.com. Clarion Lubricants, the expert that experts trust.
My son, we use PackTex obviously,
Oh, yeah?
and my high school child is he's been in here working this summer. He is so fast at applying PackTex. I don't need no machine because I can pay him $1 an hour, and he does them really fast.
I will not tell the Illinois State Department of Labor that you're paying a miner $1 an hour for that.
If they met him, they'd be like, "Yeah, don't pay him anything." PackTech, you should have a competition to see who can PackTech the fastest.
You think your kid can out PackTech?
So fast, it's crazy.
All right. Well, you heard it, folks. Gary is throwing down the gauntlet. He will throw his son in PackTech application.
Gavin's not going to be thrilled about this
against any other brewery on that. So I see a social media challenge coming around that.
That would be amazing.
I want to see the social media
PackTech
videos
challenge. There it is.
How many PackTech applicators can you push down on cases in X number of minutes?
Oh, there you go.
You can take video and put it out there on the socials.
We're gonna do it.
All right. There you go, Gary. You got your next challenge, and another reason for your son to hate you. I've got plenty for my kids to hate me, but there you go. So let's talk a little bit about lactose.
Yes.
You mentioned that it's kind of a hot button issue among brewers. The should we, shouldn't we? How do we need to label this? How do we need to be, transparent about this to consumers? There are a fair number of vegans out there for whom lactose is, it's a non-starter.
Yep.
And so most brewers are trying to, figure out how to weigh that, the benefit of using it versus what it contributes to a beer. From your perspective, what are the pros and what do you get out of it? How do you use it in terms of kind of quantity and how you add it in order to achieve what you're looking for? And then
it's all added in the brew kettle, and the quantity I don't even know because I don't brew here anymore. But I actually don't know how much we use.
You just make the social media posts.
I just do. Yeah, hell, I don't even do that anymore. But obviously lactose is non-fermentable, which is why it's used. Interesting story you said about labeling. I tried to get just put the words contains lactose on a label and send it to the TTB for their labeling approval, COLA approval as they call it, and they denied it because the regulations state that I would have to put contains milk parentheses lactose. So you have to tell out the origin of where this ingredient came from. And I'm like, that is the stupidest thing ever. I'm not gonna put it contains milk. That doesn't make any sense. So we didn't put on there. I think we could probably do it if you say with lactose. I think you can do that. But I just thought the regulations are really silly to make that. Like, we were trying to make it clear and they denied. I'm like, all right, well, I'm just gonna keep the label as it is for now. So I just thought the whole thing was just dumb. But
your government at work, people.
Yeah. Now, as far as and
you can still release that without even actually mentioning it on the label.
You don't have to mention it on there. And we'll change the label. I understand it because people should know, especially if they're lactose intolerant or vegan or whatever. We're not trying to trick anyone. And we're not trying to hide anything. But as far as, I always find it when there's controversy about what you should or shouldn't do in brewing, you can, does it make good beer? Then do it. And I don't think it really needs to be. People don't really need to argue about it. I personally, I would rather not have lactose in beer just because I think we as a society consume too much sugar as it is. And you can, like I said, with Oat Shaker and stuff, and I know Trevor at Old Irving Brewing, not far from us, he had a really nice hazy IPA with no lactose. It was really tasty, And you can definitely do it. I think it brings a couple of important things to this, and it gives that little bit of sweetness and not too much. I don't want that cloying sweetness. And it brings that body, and it totally changes the beer. And I guess people can argue all day whether you should or shouldn't do it. But for this beer, for Le Jus, it's an integral part of it. But you got to keep it in check like anything else. So.
Sure, no, that's perfectly fair, and I'm not trying to say you shouldn't do that.
No, I got you.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. I don't care what you want.
I'm not saying that I am even critical. I love milk stouts and imperial milk stouts.
Yeah.
Same
Which
kind
is
of
so
thing.
weird because that's
Right.
what I'm drinking milk stouts, and then someone said, "Oh, you got to put lactose in an IPA," and I'm like most people, I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Right, it's perfectly fine in this thing, and yet now in this thing, oh my god, it's anathema. We couldn't even possibly think about that.
Yeah.
No, I mean that's crazy, right?
Yeah.
And I think you're right. You add the ingredients that you need in order to achieve the thing, and there is certainly a specific experience of those hops and flavors of those hops that is heightened and accentuated by the presence of that,
And it's so
that
weird.
sweetness, and it takes, I think, and when I think about it psychologically, I mean, I think that there's that fruit expression that you capture from some of those hops flavors
Yeah.
that the human brain associates with sweetness, and
Yeah.
so if that concurrent sweetness is not there to highlight that, then the brain finds it jarring, or otherwise doesn't get it in the same kind of level
True,
that
yeah.
you would if that kind of sweetness is there. And so
Right.
you're spending a fuckload of money on these hops, right? I mean, these are expensive
And that's what it
hops.
is. It is a fuckload.
These are expensive hops, to push that kind of flavor
Yeah.
into the beer, and why would you not do the next thing that you need to do to that beer in order to kind of highlight, amplify, accentuate those flavors
But
from those hops?
It's just so incongruent with what I would think of as brewing, and I'm sure a lot of I actually there's always people who just hate New England IPAs, and I get it. And I know someone here in the brewing industry in Chicago, and they make it a point to make fun and hate them all they want, and I think that's hilarious. It's like, look, it's different. It's an evolution that no one expected, and who knows what's going to happen next? We don't. It's opened my eyes to thinking, all right, well, what's next? What's going to be the next exciting thing that none of us have thought of?
And eventually, like you said, you were one of those haters at one point too.
Yeah, and
you pushed stuff
so
out there
weird.
and kind of making the jokes about it, and then you found your entree to it, and then you changed your mind. And
well, it's funny because everybody, I assume a lot of people say, well, you just did it to make money, and obviously there were financial considerations, but I love the style now. I don't want to drink it all the time. We don't drink it all the time here, but I'm drinking it tonight because I'm in the mood for it, and I love the style. But it's like anything else. I don't want to drink it all the time. I don't want to drink regular IPAs all the time. So, but,
I don't want to drink any beer all the time.
There's nothing I want to drink all the time.
No, and I think you're right. What I enjoy about it is, having spent some time in the Pacific Northwest and Yakima Valley,
Sure.
In the hops fields, with hops farmers. Like when you taste these beers, they taste like hops. They are such a beautiful expression of the way that hops offer flavor and character outside of just bitterness. And so, when I taste those kinds of beers, I experience, the agriculture that goes into producing these kinds of things. And so it's not even simply just like, oh, these are going to be profitable and they taste like fruit and that's money. It's, but I mean, it's this beautiful expression of what's possible from that very agricultural perspective of growers breeding hops, developing hops, expanding these varieties in order to produce these kinds of flavors, and so it's just this beautiful flavor expression of the idea of flavor in hops themselves. You know? Like there's nothing.
Well, that's
wrong.
amazing.
How can that be wrong, right?
It's amazing that it's been able, and this evolved to be able with this combination of yeast and lactose and the process, the hopping process, and the brewing, to come out with this, like you said, this expression where we have to tell people there's no fruit juice in this. I mean, that's just amazing. And it's mind-boggling. So
let's drill down a little bit. Let's talk about what makes Le Jus such a powerhouse that it is.
let me take a drink of my Le Jus.
I would take some of mine, but I've finished mine. So we're going to have to take a break here in a little bit to refill a glass. But
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So what do you want to know?
So tell me a little bit about what it is that makes this. Are you willing to talk about some of your yeast choice that goes into this?
Yeah, I will definitely reveal some. Obviously, there's a
Fair
few
enough.
things we do that
Sure.
I don't think a lot of brewers are doing. So those obviously we keep close to chest.
Fair
But
enough.
we get our yeast from Omega, and we use their British L5, I believe is what it's called, and that's that's probably the yeast they propagate the most. Omega's here in Chicago; they're right down the street. So, but they supply a lot of yeast to breweries all over the country now, and it's the standard. I believe it's originally from Boddington's, which is hilarious that's where it's from. But that is the standard workhorse for this style, and we tried making this beer when we were first experimenting. We did it with all kinds of different. We did it with Belgian yeast. We did it with other English yeast. We did it with American yeast. Not because we expected to get the results, but we just wanted to try it. And sure enough, that yeast is it's what for whatever reason the way it ferments and the way it works is different from other English strains. I believe you guys just did a podcast with that narrow gauge.
Yeah, with Jeff from Narrow
Was he the one
Gauge.
I didn't listen to it. You talked about maybe using different strains
He
or
used
something.
British Ale 4 from Omega, I believe.
Yeah. So we haven't tried that, but that's interesting. It's once again one of those things where you just assume everything's this way, and then you maybe find out it's not. But at least our experience, that is the yeast, and that is not a trade secret. But we're sitting out on the dock. I don't know if you've explained. We're on the dock here. We're outside. There's planes from O'Hare.
It is a beautiful night here in Chicago. Yeah.
There's some bugs, and there's some factory across the tracks over there. You might hear their stuff, but anyway. And cars parking. So
we opted for the nice breeze out here versus the gorgeous bubbling of your fermenters.
Yeah, it's a little warm in there. So, so definitely that yeast. Right now we go to 4. We will reuse it. We'll go to 4 generations with that yeast. When we first started brewing, we had a lot of questions because a lot of brewers apparently, or some will just do it once and not reuse it.
Yeah.
And that is not. We get just as good a beer on 2, 3, and 4 as we do on 1.
Okay.
And but what we do, we pull that yeast before we're dry hopping.
Okay.
So, the common, a lot of people assume that whole bio.
So you're not biotransforming, yeah.
Yeah, and whatever if that's actually a thing or not, which, there's still it's yet, I guess, unproven or what's actually happening, but you still get that because there's still fermentation going on.
Sure.
We just don't want all that hop matter in our yeast, which could, in theory, prohibit it from doing its job, but so yeah, and that's not something we learned that from some other breweries, and that seems to work really well for us. So that's what we do.
So do you crash and drop yeast and harvest, or what's that process look like?
We do lower it a little bit. I have to be honest, I'm not the brewer anymore, and even though I know most of this, I don't know all the details,
all right.
And so I don't want to say just because Aaron will be like, no, you idiot, that's not what we do. But we do lower the temperature a little bit, and to get a little bit of flocculation so we can get that yeast out of there for sure, but not too cold. And then once we get that yeast pulled, then we'll start the actual dry hopping.
How many? And you say you get about 3 or 4 generations out of that yeast?
Yeah, we go 4 generations with it.
Yeah.
We may at some point we'll go more, but right now we're just not prepared to do that without some serious planning and testing, so that I don't lose 60 barrels of Le Jus due to a bad fermentation. So.
And you got Omega down the street, so
Yes.
Why not get a fresh pitch and
exactly.
and guarantee it, right? Rather
than
saving some money to take a little risk like that just stops being worth it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So talk to me a little about the hops themselves. I imagine you talk that's public knowledge about what hops you're using.
Citra, Mosaic, nothing there.
Easy button hops, right?
Yeah. The auto-tune of beer,
Yeah.
as someone once told me. It's about 50-50. The exact amounts are somewhat proprietary. I will tell you they're not as high as a lot of places do. And we do some kind of interesting things during the dry hopping that I also can't reveal.
Now, are those hops you're selecting, or are those hops that you're
those
ordering?
are just on our contracts that we're getting.
Okay.
We have yet to. We're not fancy enough to go out to Yakima and do the cuts and everything.
Yeah.
But we've been doing single variants, which you have Simcoe right there, where we literally only use Simcoe in the whole thing. We've done it with Citra and Mosaic. Well, those are obvious. But we're going to be going into some more interesting hops and some more, even like something like Centennial, and just really kind of learn what these different hops can do on their own. And it keeps, we're marketing the Lejeune brand, and it's literally the same base beer, and we're just changing hopping. And we've already learned quite a bit, like just how these different hops work and what they like. This Simcoe doesn't taste. I would not ever believe it's Simcoe. It tastes so completely different. That could also be how Simcoe's changed over the years too. Those hops can be kind of odd. Some of these more aggressive hops, with how they taste and smell over the years.
And whatever that lot of Simcoe is that you just happen to have, and this kind of thing,
and then the lactose and everything. So.
And so you're not piggybacking on another brewer, and pulling from their hop selection. These are just what you're pulling out of your contracts.
Yeah. These are our
selection?
Contracts, and we're going to be looking into some experimental hops. So we're going to keep riffing on that.
Yeah.
But and that's worked out really well for us because people are excited to try it, and we just we have the same label. We change the colors, and we do this all. Aaron, our brewer, designs most of these labels.
Wow.
He's the closest thing we have to an artist. And then I usually go in and tweak them. Sometimes I change them quite a bit, but I'm always I know I can go in and change everything and get it consistent enough, and change colors and stuff to get it where we want it. And then so that's what we've been doing with it.
So you mentioned some proprietary things in dry hopping, and I won't push you on those.
Sure. Good, because I ain't gonna tell you shit.
Well, I'm gonna try to do what I can to weasel around on some sideways entries into that kind of thing, and see what of those secrets I can eventually pry from you in kind of roundabout ways. But seriously. You've got a 20-barrel brew house.
Yep.
You're brewing, sometimes triple batching into a 60-barrel tank for something like Lejeune.
Yep.
Due to the crazy demand for this kind of beer.
Yeah.
What does that dry hopping process look like for you? Are you popping tanks open and dropping in?
We literally climb up a ladder. We have ladder hooks. We have a forklift that raises the boxes up, and Aaron's usually the guy up there with a big ass funnel dumping those in. At the different times, and we've been experiencing hop creep, which is kind of a relatively new phenomenon that people have really started talking about the last few years. I was just listening to the MBAA podcast about it last week with people from Bell's and Allagash, and we've definitely noticed it. And we've started using a spunding valve that we got from GW Kent, which is like $400, but we were noticing not only were we getting a whole bunch of CO2 coming out, and we originally thought it was just nucleation.
Right.
And then we started seeing the gravity would drop like another Play-Doh. And that's where we're like, And then we hired our newer brewer, Trevor here, who used to work for Haymarket here in Chicago. He's the one that he and Aaron kind of figured this out. So we started using the spunding valve, which allows us to control how much CO2 blows out, and then we can retain CO2 so it carbonates naturally. It's a German thing.
Sure.
It's a very old idea, and it's actually improved the flavor of the beer.
That's what's driving those slow pour pilsners right now too.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of I knew of them, and it seems like it's kind of been lost in modern brewing. But it's really amazing.
Of the brewers that I've talked to, different brewers have different approaches to this. Yeah, certainly. And we've talked about this a bunch of times, whether it's Sean from Cerebral or Jeff Irway from La Cumbre. And different breweries have different approaches to this. Jeff's approach was like, hey, I just want to do whatever I can to keep those temperatures high, accelerate the process of hops creep so that secondary re-fermentation happens and then finishes.
Yeah.
And that I can clear that beer up and then, keep moving forward. It sounds like you are actually trying to prevent that hops, that re-fermentation from happening from increasing the hydrostatic pressure by.
No, we're not keeping it from happening. What we're trying to do is we were just getting a lot of blowout of the CO2.
And you don't want to lose that blow off because that's
Yeah.
taking aroma out of the beer with it, of course.
So this was an idea where, hey, we could probably accomplish a couple of things here.
Yeah.
We can.
So the fermentation is still going to happen.
Absolutely.
Even under that pressure.
Yep.
You're just trying to recapture the aroma and keep those aromatic compounds within the liquid while
which in theory, that
happening.
should be what's happening.
Yeah.
That could be one of those things. Nothing surprises me anymore. You could take two samples, one that was spun and one that wasn't, and find out they got the exact same amount. Who knows? But for us, I mean, it obviously saves CO2, which I'm a big fan of.
Sure.
And it seems silly to...
Why buy that from the natural gas, petroleum industry?
It's just going to go right back in. So... to me, and it saves time, and it makes a better quality beer. So, and our guys love, they firmly believe that you get a higher quality carbonation. I think that's one of those, I don't know. I don't know if I believe that, but whatever. It's everyone has opinions on that too. But I don't see a downside to it.
Sure.
There's no downside, at least for our system and how we do it. So I'm a big fan of it. So I'm glad we just started doing it a couple months ago. So I'm spun fucking every beer.
There's a great article about spunning in the current issue, the stout issue of Craft Beer and Brewing magazine. Just throwing it out there. Shameless promotion.
Oh, really? Okay.
Absolutely. In the context generally of lagers and it approaches it through the Bierstadt Lager House, kind of approach to spunning in that kind of traditional sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're right. There's a quality to that carbonation that is a little bit different than the quality of forced carbonated carbonation. And while it makes a difference in Pilsners, I think you're actually have an interesting point there that can make a similarly important contribution even to something like an IPA.
Right. And obviously we carbonate Lejeune lower, which is a pretty standard. I think it's I want to say 1.5 volumes instead of 2.5.
Okay.
I may be wrong on that. Aaron would probably punch me. It might be 2. Something like that. But
apparently, I'm talking to the wrong guy for this podcast.
It makes a huge difference, though. You probably are, but it makes a huge difference with if it's too carbonated. And that was one of the first things I'm like, what? Why do we have to carbonate low? And we experimented with that, and we discovered, sure enough, it's a mouthfeel. It makes a huge difference, and it just doesn't seem to work with a hazy IPA to have that high carbonation, at least for us. I'm sure there's other people who say, nope, we're doing it regular and it works great, which, that's fine too. But for us,
I think conceptually you look, you can, think about how that kind of, carbonic acid in, CO2 is adding, a bite to those, to these beers that is counteracting the kind of softness and sweetness that you're pushing in there.
Exactly what it is.
Through these other elements. And, right, I can see why that lower carbonation level is going to help these other things that you're working so hard to push into that beer help express themselves more.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. Carbonation makes a huge difference on any beer.
Sure.
For sure.
Now, you mentioned multiple dry hop additions a second ago, just in an offhanded way, and you completely expected me to ignore
I knew it.
The fact that you mentioned that. Let's talk about that because, certainly after, the Narrow Gauge podcast where we started talking about the difference between double dry hopping and multiple stage dry hopping, which some brewers had actually texted me like, you're defining the difference between these things. There is a difference between 2-stage dry hopping, double dry hopping. For you, what does the dry hopping process look like that allows you as you said, to capture the kind of hops flavor, but also avoid some of that kind of vegetal note that can happen through kind of longer contacts with hops.
Well, we definitely do 2 dry hop additions at different
Multiple
times.
stage dry hops. Okay.
Yeah, is that the actual?
That's the term that Vinny wants me to use on that. Multiple stage or 2-stage dry hopping.
Yeah, which is funny because the whole DDH thing it's just funny to me. I mean, it's almost like it's kind of a marketing term now.
Which is funny because the beer we were just drinking was DDH Simcoe Lejeune.
That's a marketing term.
It's totally a marketing term.
Lejeune is double dry hopped, but
even just regular Lejeune.
Yeah, it's totally regular.
And you don't include that, but when it comes to selling something as special, you might just add that term because it applies.
It applies, and we're not lying.
Makes it feel
it's just
special
what
to
it
the
is.
consumer, right?
It's just it's just funny because I don't know where that term came up, but there's been a lot of beers double dry hop a long time before that term came out. But and
which is Vinny's point when he's talking about it. It's like we've pretty much always quote unquote double dry hopped Pliny the Elder because we do 2-stage dry hopping.
I've said that. I've been saying that for a long time. When I first heard DDH, I go, Pliny the Elder's a DDH. I'm like, they've been doing that for years. Anyway, so we so we do 2 different dry hop editions, and for us, the big thing is to we don't let it sit really long. I mean, we're letting it dry hop for probably about a week. It depends. The other
per edition.
No, we'll do. Actually, I don't know that either. So now you're gonna hit me. I don't know what those editions are. But the
Gary.
And probably Aaron doesn't want me to tell you anyway. But the thing is we dump that pretty regularly. So we don't like the hop sitting there a long time.
Okay.
We don't want to pick up that vegetal flavor. So we do.
Pretty fast turnarounds on each of those dry hops.
As far as that goes, we're constantly
doing it warm,
dumping
in order to kind of maximize extraction, or you keep it cooler?
We don't. We keep it a little cooler actually, and we actually had we did an experiment that didn't turn out great. But the temperature went too low, and you really saw a drop in the extraction. It made even at 10 degrees.
How low did it go?
It went down 10 to about 60 degrees, and it was, for us, it just changed everything.
Really?
So, so we do a little bit cooler. We don't let it get warm necessarily, and we do a lot of dumping the cone to get that stuff out. It also helps clear the beer up. When I say clear, but get rid of that hop matter, because I don't want hop matter in this beer.
There's the difference between those really lovely fruit flavors and then the kind of cutting, sharp, kind of hops burn flavors that you're talking about. They almost have like a cutting herbal burn to them.
And we're trying to avoid that. Now, and early on, we definitely got that in some of our beers.
Yeah.
And we seem to have avoided it now, but I do not like that. It's not something I like in beer at all.
Most people don't. Although it's weird. I mean, there are some brewers I've talked to where their consumers ask for that now.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's like Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
Like this is what I get, so now I've grown to like this. And
I think there's nothing wrong with it per se. It's just personal tastes, but for us, it's just not something we like. So that's how we do it.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So what is it? What is the that core thing that makes Lejeune what it is?
I think
how do you think about it and define it yourself?
I think if you want to boil it down to what I think the secret is to it, is we just don't put as much dry hops in as a lot of people do. And we don't. We just don't. We've tried higher, and it just makes it more expensive, and I don't think it tastes as good. And so that's a pretty easy thing to do is to back that off, and I think you get. I don't want it to taste like a hop plant. I want it to taste like you said, express the hops that are in it, without all that vegetal and that hop bite and all that. So it's not an arms race. So we like our beers a little more subtle. That's just kind of how we do it. And in this case, it worked out. But a lot of people want stuff really aggressive, and And that's just not the world we live in. We've done maybe one imperial stout ever. That's just not, at least today, not the world we live in, where we do really big, high alcohol, big beers. So Lejeune fits right in exactly with what we are, how we believe beers should be brewed.
Sure.
So
we haven't really talked about the malt component of of the beer at all, but that certainly, I imagine, has some sort of impact on the way that the flavors
we've got
are conveyed.
we have our base malt. It's mostly Country Malt's 2-row. They're base 2-row malt. We have some wheat. We have some flaked wheat in there, and some other stuff that I do know, but I'm not allowed to say.
So cagey.
And
okay.
a couple of things that Aaron kind of fell upon that I think kind of gives it a little bit of a nuance that at first I was like, what? And I'm like, oh. So, but yeah, that's
there's got to be some
that's
sort
hard
of
to fuck up.
challenge for everyone out there to reverse engineer now. What could he mean by that?
Do you want to know a funny story about that?
Sure.
I won't say the brewery, but I was we were at Nashville at the Craft Brewers Conference last year, and a pretty well-known brewery from your state came
Colorado,
by us, and they
yeah.
Are you in Colorado?
I'm in Colorado.
Oh, your part. What's his name?
Hayden.
He's from Oregon
originally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, the point is, it's in Oregon.
Brewery from Oregon. Okay.
And they came and they saw our tags and they said, "Hey, Lejeune, GABF." We're like, "Yeah." And he goes, "We started. Actually, no, this was before GABF. Actually, right? Yeah." That was Nashville.
CBC? Nashville?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. So he came out and he said, we got a guy who's originally from Chicago, and he comes in and he brings us Lejeune, and we're going to start making a hazy IPA. So we've been taking Lejeune and putting it in the lab and examining it and running it through all their spectrometers and all these, whatever all the devices they have. And
so
I started
it's that
laughing.
kind of level of brewery,
and
huh?
I laughed. That made me laugh. And they were kind of trying to get some info out of us, and I'm like, they asked, and I'm like, yeah, that's one way you could do it. And I just kind of left it at that. I'm like, you guys got way more money than we do. I'm not telling you shit. I appreciate, imitation is the highest form of flattery, but not in this case. But, it's just super competitive. It's not like, we're not like super crazy secret, but this beer we worked really hard on.
Yeah.
And we just, it's our baby. And right now it's determining the whole future of this business. So, if we were a gigantic brewer, I'd be like, yeah, here's the whole recipe, here's everything about it. But at this point, I can't.
So what is the scope? How many barrels per year do you all produce, and how much of that now is Lejeune?
Last year, total barrels of beer was about 1,200. This year, we're going to do at least 2,400. And that's just because of limited capacity. I'm working on new financing to expand the brewery. Not crazy, just probably a centrifuge.
So winning that GABF medal has doubled your...
I brought those 360s in after we won that because we didn't have those. And they're all three full of Lejeune at any given moment. So I would say, at least probably 60% of our production is Lejeune right now. And we could make it 100%. And still not have enough. And I only sell it. We only sell in Chicago and the suburbs. We don't go outside the state. I don't even have part of Chicago covered with my distribution network, nor do we have the rest of Illinois. So I just don't want to do it like that. Even if I had the money, I just don't think it's smart. I think we just let it. We want to keep the quality and grow it organically, if you will. And this year, my goal, I really want to hit that 3,000 barrel mark. That's kind of a nice mark to hit as far as just knowing that you can sleep at night without having to worry about pay bills and all that stuff. But it's made a huge difference for us. So, and every single week, that is by far the top selling beer in our tap room, hands down, unless we have a Lejeune variant, which is crazy. So
yeah. It's all about that DDH version, isn't it?
Yes, you slap that DDH on there. But yeah, so for sure. But yeah, it's been life-changing for us, for sure. And it's been, we were just really thrilled to death. And it's nice because we get people coming in, that have had some of the other well-known hazies from the East Coast, and they're like, yeah, we love yours more. And that's nice to hear, but there's also not people lining up for 3 miles to come in and buy the beer yet. But we still, I mean, part of it's because we sell it through distribution, so it's all over Chicago and the suburbs. So, and it sells
all over
pretty
being
quickly.
a relative term for a brewery that only produces 2,400 barrels per year.
Yeah, so we don't have it everywhere, and there's certain places we just, like certain stores, we don't really care to do it just because we don't want it to sit there. But
from that retail strategy, I mean, you have to want those cans to sell within a couple of weeks so that they're nice and fresh.
Yeah.
And I think, to some degree, the, constraints around distribution almost guarantee that any, beer that you put out there on shelves is going to sell within that kind of time frame. Huh?
Yes, it almost always does, but you can't control everything. I mean, any brewery that distributes will tell you, we found, one of our guys found a case of, or a 4-pack of Phobophobia, which is a Belgian table beer we used to make. We have it on tap right now, but we don't can it. It was a year old, and we hadn't brewed it for a year and a half. And he found that in a store. I was like, oh my God, that's awful. But that's not a problem with Lejeune. It tends to go pretty quickly. So
how does a small brewery larger breweries and distributors, tend to police and retail counts, those kind of date codes, and good retailers should be pulling that stock when it gets to,
they rarely do,
to be too old, right? And that's kind of the challenge that all craft brewers face in this general market. What the expectations are for a retailer and for the distributor that you're giving a good chunk of revenue to in order to get your beer out there, doesn't always reflect itself in the same kind of aggressive policies for making sure that all of your product is within date code. And then smaller breweries that are self-distributing are often don't have the time and staff in order to kind of police that and check the shelves and make sure that their product out there is within that kind of code and that consumers are getting it in a fresh kind of way. Which kind of leads back to that, now within the world of craft beer, one of the best retail experiences buying directly from the brewery. You've got a couple of, cold cases right there in your tap room where people can come up and they can buy buy fresh beer, and they know it's going to be within probably a week or 2 weeks max of release, and the freshest thing they can possibly experience. If that's a value to that consumer, that's certainly has to be the best consumption mode for it, or best purchase mode for it.
We sell a lot of cases of beer through the tap room for sure, including of course Lejeune. But that's been a huge, that's been a huge revenue generator for us, which is great because, obviously you make all your way better margins when you sell it yourself. And, it's great. People get to come here and buy that beer fresh and not have to worry about it sitting on the shelf, because it does not. And it's kept cold the entire time it's here at the brewery. So you never get beer that was kept warm. So that's nice for sure. So,
Gary, tell me what's next for Alarmist.
Well, like I think we talked, I'm probably going to start a porn site. I think we can make a lot of revenue with that.
I don't know. I think the margins for porn are pretty tight these days.
Interesting choice of words.
Much tighter than for craft beer. Yeah. Is that an interesting choice? I don't know.
I don't know. We're always. Right now, my mind is
folks
mostly...
get to share that stuff illegally with no profit going back to the producers, where it's really hard to duplicate that for Lejeune.
That's true. So maybe I won't do that.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just stick with beer. Maybe that's a better... to hell with it. I won't do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
And for the folks that are listening, that goes back to a joke Gary was presenting to our Brewery Accelerator crew here earlier. And someone asked him, if you were going back and do it again, what would you do differently? And his answer was, I'd start a porn site instead of a brewery.
And I didn't know if I was going to go completely silent, but it got a few laughs. But that one couple did not think that was funny.
No, that one couple did not.
But it made me laugh. Obviously, we will continue to push Lejeune and variants, but I'll be honest, if we had to do that all day long, we'd probably lose our goddamn minds. So my first goal before the end of the year is to expand, get some new equipment in here so we can package faster and better. probably a centrifuge to get the beer through faster, and better quality as well. A couple, a lot of stuff I want to do there. And then as far as beer goes, I don't know. I've got some, probably for me personally, if I could choose anything, I would love to really delve into spontaneous fermented lambic style beers, which is completely different than what we do. And that's something that we just haven't really spent time on. And that's probably something I should have told your group that came through today. Is one of the things I've really learned with a small business is you only have so many resources, meaning people and money, and you can't do everything. You just don't have the time. So you have to really try to focus on what makes the most sense for your business and go from there. And I would love to really delve into, even have a separate warehouse where we keep these beers. And I'm not really interested in bourbon barrel beers, not really interested in that side, but just using oak barrels just for their fermentation capacity, and just make completely spontaneously fermented beers and just see where that goes. I think that would be really fun, but that's going to be a while. But someday I want to do that. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to taste those beers when you make them.
Yeah, well, if they're good, I'll let you. If not, I won't. We actually have some original barrels over there with a lot of Brettanomyces, and we brewed those a long time ago, and the actual base beers are not terrific. So we're going to dump those and actually probably just reuse those barrels and use the Brett that's in there, maybe. That's something we have to look into. And we'll probably inoculate and do a cool ship and all these things someday. That's what I really, really want to do, so...
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So if people want to learn more about Alarmist, where do they find you?
Alarmistbrewing.com. We have all of our social media accounts are Alarmist Brewing. We have some pretty funny stuff on Instagram. We're pretty everyone here is pretty fun, has a pretty good sense of humor, and we definitely have a lot of fun. So that's absolutely the best place for now. And eventually I keep trying to put a newsletter together, but I haven't actually got to that. I should probably do that.
I don't know.
We're just busy.
Or just keep making more Le Jus.
Or make more Le Jus.
Something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, if you've enjoyed this podcast, we hope you go to beerandbrewing.com and click on the subscribe button and subscribe to Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, because, that is our bread and butter, and what we do is our primary focus here at Craft Beer and Brewing. And that kind of subscription, you can kind of think of it as like a Patreon, except we actually send you a magazine every 2 months.
Instead of nothing.
Instead of just listening to this and giving us money. So it's like a little perk there, right? We think there's a positive to that kind of thing. Go to beerandbrewing.com, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to the magazine. Help us keep bringing you great conversations like this one with Gary Gulley of Alarmist Brewing here in Chicago. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. But in the meantime, go check out Alarmist. Go trade your friends in the Chicago area for a couple of cans of Le Jus. And get to try this award-winning, gold medal-winning Hazy IPA.
That's right.
Gary, cheers. Thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Cheers.
You bet.
This podcast is brought to you by Craft Beer and Brewing Magazine, for those that love to make and drink great beer. Learn more online or subscribe at beerandbrewing.com, or find us on social media at Craft Beer Brew.